So if you're hungry, make sure you go out and enjoy a nice taco. If you got any local taquerias or taco trucks, make sure to stop in and say hi. Now, you will want to make sure you got your papers and everything if you go, because it looks like ICE has picked up a new tactic. As a matter of fact, got some reporting here that they opened up a Spanish food truck, and basically everybody that came to get lunch, they were like, "Hey, here's your taco. How about those papers?" And so none of them had their papers, and they were all deported or arrested to be deported.
Wow,
Yeah, wild
that's
stuff, huh?
that's different.
Well, you got to think outside the box, or else outside the bun, as they say at Taco Bell, right?
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
got
I mean,
they got some nice
hey,
iced tacos.
I don't know. Honestly like the whole thing is kind of. I give them credit for finding unique and new ways to go do what they need to do. And realistically, like if we take a step back for a minute, wanted or not, uh, the task to do the enforcement after what the left did to the border is just it's a monumental and Herculean task.
Oh, to be sure.
We can turn around and say that we want the 10 million people deported, and that the answer is that'll probably not happen, right? They're gonna have to come up with all kinds of nifty ways, but sheerly the raw logistics of handling it is kind of crazy.
I mean, it's
And
not impossible, but
I mean,
it's a tall order.
and that's the thing, right? Like the creative, they have to be creative, because to make it not impossible while not violating civil liberties is really hard. That's a really tight needle for them to squeeze. They've got to arrest a whole ton of people who, you know, aren't necessarily going to make themselves known for the desire to be arrested, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
And well, they've got to come up with these novel methods. Just kind of is what it is.
yeah.
But on
Yeah.
a somewhat related note, you may or may not have caught this one. There's a number of people who have issued their utter disgust at the possibility, but it's the times we find ourselves in. Anyway, some folks at the DHS, I have no idea how what the veracity of this is, but reporting is that DHS, there are people that are talking about putting together a reality TV show where I don't know if it would be illegals or if it would just be potential immigrants. There's not really much information at this point because leaks. But immigrants would compete in various challenges so that they could fast track their citizenship. The tentative name is the American, and it's been pitched by one of the guys that worked on Duck Dynasty, Rob Warsoff. So there's just a hint of some Hunger Games vibes there. You could kind of
Yeah,
say
I'm not super big fan of that.
it's like I kind of don't care, but also it's like it's a little gauche, you could say, and
Yeah,
not be out of turn.
I don't know. On one hand, I turn around and I go, okay, these people broke the law. They did it knowingly, willingly, intentionally, which is a terrible start to, hey, I want to come to this new place. Now, we can also turn around and have a discussion about American access to America being not necessarily as available as it should be. Right? That's another aspect of this is the issue with legal immigration. Part of the problem is that there's not an easy way to get legal immigration status. It's not like there could be very good, hardworking, you know, well-to-do people who are want to come to the country and would be great additions to it that are have to come in illegally because it is a tedious process to come in legally. There's also a whole bunch of people who are coming in who would not be good additions in any way, shape, or form. And, like, that's why we have immigration controls. So
Well, you
I'd
say
be
that,
okay.
but SCOTUS kind of ruled 7-2 that Tren de Aragua gets, some special treatment. So you kind of wonder if
What are
we
you
do
talking
have
about?
laws. Oh, did you not catch that?
No, no.
Oh, yeah, no, the
I
Alien Enemies Act was not struck down, but they will require further scrutiny before they can be deported. And you can imagine the lines
well,
being
I mean,
7-2.
so I don't know. I struggle. I appreciate that Trump is diving into archaic law in order to do his thing without he's not just I get to make the laws or whatever. Like that's a positive thing. The downside is some of some of these things are going to be a stretch, and the Alien Enemies Act I think is kind of on the side of a stretch. I think it's kind of a stretch. I'm not saying that it's outside of the realm of possibility, but I do think that that's kind of stretching the intent of that ruling, right?
It would depend on how well you could define these specific alien groups. More, in
Yeah,
my opinion, at least. I mean,
yeah.
I'm the furthest thing from a court justice or anything, but
I mean, I don't know. I think that there are far more. To be honest, like I know that they did the Supreme Court thing that they were aiming for on Friday, or was it Thursday or Friday? They were doing the arguments there.
it was
That
Friday.
looked to be a
And
little
just
bit
to clarify
interesting.
on that, it's not a final ruling. It's been sent back down, so it'll head down to federal court where, excuse me, where it'll they're gonna kind of determine the terms of this. I guess would be the best way to say it. So like, what is an enemy and what can be defined as such. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Basically, what they're saying is the way that it's being done now in their quote does not pass muster. So it puts out the temporary freeze that was put out on the 19th of April, and now we'll have to see what the district court does, and they'll probably sit on their hands as they have and draw this thing out like they have been. So honestly, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays. And if they push this too far and too long, the American people are frankly tired of this bullshit. And he's got that portrait hanging in his office of a fellow that just said, "Hey, the courts have made their ruling. Let them enforce it."
Yeah, I know, but I would. I don't, what was it? He was going after a twofer. I think it was. Maybe that was Thursday. Thursday, I think he was going for a twofer. He was aiming for the universal injunctions, taking aim at that, which I'm mixed on that. I do agree with the administration that the judges are interfering with the duties of the executive branch, and co-equal checks and balances doesn't mean one gets to directly interfere. It's like it's not that the co-equal checks doesn't mean usurpation. It means co-equal checks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the judiciary can stop the executive provided that um, somebody has made the case. And so if you make a case, you form a class, and you come out with a class action suit, then anybody who's protected by that class can be done, but it has to be a registered member of the class. And I'd be okay with something like that. If they were to say, hey, we're going to stop the mandates for vaccination, and part of this is going to be that I had to go sit there and sign my name to. If they turn around, let's say they put the lawsuit out and they said, "Hey, we're going to file a class action suit against the federal government for this," and I had to go sign my name to it, and that's all I had to do was just sign my name to it. I think that's fine, but then that means that I'm protected, and the individuals who don't sign their name to it are not, right? And you file an injunction that way. the judge makes a universal injunction. No, you really can't make universal injunctions.
Yeah,
You
it's
can
like,
make
hey, judge, you're not actually an injured party in this, so where are you coming
right,
from with that?
exactly. Like they can't just they have to
And worse
and they
still,
can't.
too, they do a lot of district shopping on this, so they're going to districts that are genuinely unaffected by a lot of these matters too. On top
Well,
of the
that's the other
issues,
problem, right? Like that's the other problem is you're talking about, especially with the immigration stuff.
yeah, it's like you go to a
That's
Connecticut
100%
judge, like,
executive.
what the hell are you doing?
That's 100% executive.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They have
absolutely.
they have zero power and authority there, and you know, somehow they're doing whatever they're doing, which is wild.
Or by that same note, to try and make calls that the Secretary of Defense has the the Secretary of Defense and the Chief Executive of the Armed Services are the people with the sole authority to make these decisions. That's not a place for SCOTUS really to step in.
Right.
It's like if they're going to say no trans people in the army, that's their call.
Then
That's
so be it.
that's just
Then
the way it's
so
going to be going
frickin'
forward.
be it. Yeah. And I mean again, right? Like I I understand. I think that a lot of these times, these cases where the judges have stepped in, I actually say I see it as a both sides issue. There is a legitimate case to be made that the executive is overstepping its bounds. 100%. However, however, they have the authority to whether or not they're overstepping kind of what they should be doing. Um, they should still be able to process and execute in the executive. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, people have to be allowed to do their job.
the people have to be allowed to do their job. You can't turn around and say, we can't have a situation where we know that the Biden administration basically flooded the country with illegal immigrants. And now another administration comes in as a result of an election and says, hey, we're going to get rid of them, and this is all part of federal authority to do so anyways. And the judges say, well, no, these people all need to have individualized hearings. No, 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 no. That's not how this works, right? This is not a case of, and I hate the idea of them saying they're suspending habeas corpus, because that's not, I don't think that applies here. In the
Not
case of
yet,
habeas
anyway.
corpus, in the case of habeas corpus, right? The whole point is that you can
Yeah, a lot of
get
it's
your
to
day in
have
court.
redress of your grievances as a
Correct.
person aggrieved by the government.
Correct. But in the case of illegal immigration, this is not a situation where we're like, hey, is it a he said she said argument? No, like we have databases. We check the databases. You're not in them. That means you're not supposed to be here. If you have paperwork that says, hey, I actually should have been here, that's fine. But like, if we catch you, you can't go then file an asylum claim. You can't then go petition the United States. You can't start generating paperwork after that point. You didn't feel you needed paperwork to start, and then all of a sudden you do institute paperwork. That's a serious problem.
Yeah, as a matter of
If you
fact,
turn
it
if
almost leans into showing that you've got a sense of guilt. Like, oh, I fucked up. I need to fix this.
correct. And so if you're turning around and saying, hey, individuals who have, like, if you came here, you had a visa, you overstayed your visa, I'm okay with that. The Trump administration coming in and taking away the legal status of the what was it, the 150,000 people or whatever, that's a good case for those people to have a case in court.
Fair.
But your general guy who runs across the border, nope. Like, we checked, you're not here, you never filed anything legally, you don't have a case. And we need to start acting like that.
Absolutely. You broke the law in the first place, and you didn't follow up by trying to remedy that in any sort of timely fashion. And now that the hammer's coming down, you're like, oh no, oh no. Again,
Well,
it doesn't lend
it's not
itself
just that,
to
right? Like,
a good narrative for the person that's in that situation.
it's not just that, right? It's a crime, and the
Right.
state has to sit there and bring a burden of proof. Well, the state basically just sits there and looks at its paperwork and says, "Yup, you don't have anything saying you can be here."
Mm-hmm.
Like, how, like, you didn't register with us in any way, shape, or form. You're not in any of our databases. You didn't file any forms. So unless you have a spare copy of a form kicking around, that you did file, and somebody forgot to like log it,
Mm-hmm.
which I'd be all open to that as a court case.
Oh yeah, that
But
could happen.
realistically, like the government has reached its burden of proof. They've shown that you did not sit there and apply for legal recourse at any point. So, like, that's really your habeas corpus, right? Your habeas corpus is you sitting there and saying that you are not guilty by reason of X or Y or Z. Well, in this case, you are guilty because you have no filed paperwork saying that you're supposed to be here legally. Like you're not born here legally. We generally have an idea as to when they came across the border and all that other stuff. That's not the same as an individual who's like who has paperwork.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and just as a quick update on the secondary SCOTUS case from the other day, still waiting. So they've just begun hearing arguments. We don't have a decision on the universal injunction case yet.
Well, it was universal injunctions, and it was in for something else too. Oh, birthright citizenship. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to get a 2-for-1 there. I don't think they'll win the birthright citizenship. I really don't. I
Mm-hmm.
understand the argument the government's making, and this is one of the problems. I do think that we pass laws and people abuse them, and that always happens, right? That's inherent to um, that's an inherent part of the rule of law is that people are going to attempt to abuse technicalities.
Sure.
Uh, so like, how do you handle that? That's a good question. I don't necessarily have a great answer for that, but we do know that people will abuse technicalities, and that's kind of what's going on here. Is the people who wrote the law didn't anticipate people intentionally abusing it, right? America's a great country. There's a lot of reasons to be here, but I don't think anybody realized that we would be the economic powerhouse that we are. We were a frigging colony of Britain, for God's sakes. And so, like, nobody really anticipated in the early stages of uh, citizenship and all of those debates, birthright citizenship and whatnot. Nobody really sat there and thought that there would be people who just attempted to make their way here solely for and we didn't have a welfare system at the time, solely
Oh,
so that they
yeah.
could sit there and suck on the tit of the government.
Well,
Like
and
we
to
didn't
be
have that.
completely honest, corporations weren't anything like what they are now either. It was an utterly different world.
Right. Yep. So
You
it's I don't know.
case in point, you'd say General Washington or President Washington, whichever. In there's the Tartars are doing terrible things in Afghanistan, and he's going to stare at you as if you're a madman, as well he should.
Yep.
You know, like
Yep.
what care have I for the Tartars? So what care have I for Afghanistan? But we don't live in those times anymore, and everything's interconnected, and corporations are people, and they have rights they shouldn't, and etc., etc. The joys of modern living.
Mhm.
That said, Eurovision was today, and someone won and someone lost. I don't care who. If you happen to know, congratulations, and if you don't, congratulations. Uh, it was realistically probably Ukraine or Israel, if I'm just hazarding a guess, but things are what they are. But anyway, since no need to get off topic, so we'll talk about other interesting and I don't know, I guess you could say somewhat disappointing things. That's going to be
I know. I
the,
do have something to share with our audience. It's very disappointing.
okay. Well,
It appears that
real quickly, James Comey he put out a incredibly thinly veiled
that one.
that one.
Yeah, James Comey and his
Yeah, he
dumbass
put out
creed.
the 8647 thing. I found this on the beach. How weird, how
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
What could it mean, everybody? And of course, Ed Krasenstein also put out something similar. And
Well, he did it to try to like make it look like it's normal. And to be fair, right? So I did see this bumper sticker during Trump's first term, right?
I
I
have not,
absolutely
but
did.
I have seen, since this has come up, I've seen some people that have posted about it. And Apparently, Poso did one of them too. So Secret Service wants to visit him. Fair enough. Oh, and
Yeah.
speaking of Secret Service visits, as a matter of fact, on the note of Ed Krasenstein, after he put that out, he got a number of people saying, "Man, you better expect the feds to come say hi." He's like, uh, to paraphrase, Ed was very much, "They ain't gonna do shit." Well, they did come and visit. As a matter of fact, they came and visited him that evening as well. James Comey was taken in for questioning. Actually, not arrested though, as of this time, but still. At least it's something. I can only imagine what sort of garish treatment we'd get if the Eye of Sauron, old Joe Biden, got on us during that administration. But it is what it is. Oh, speaking of the Eye of Sauron, here's some good news you may have missed, or at least funny news. Cash is going to be shutting down the DC FBI headquarters. And
Really?
moving the 1,500 some agents that are employed there to, well, it doesn't really say, but I can imagine to headquarters in Virginia and then, around the States.
Where are they moving them from?
DC headquarters. They're
And where are they
shutting it
moving
down.
them to?
It doesn't really say. Presumably, to headquarters
What's
in
the
Quantico.
justification for this?
Apparently, it's just seeing very little use. Like the DC office just not very active. That's now I don't have like firm reporting on that, but that's what I've seen as I've looked into it myself.
I mean, that's a decent justification.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not using it, it falls in line with a lot of these other government grift and graft programs. It's might as well just shut it down if it's not actually doing anything.
It's true. Now, I do have a public service announcement.
Yes. What were you saying there? What was going on in that?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have terrible news. The Illuminate are coming for Super Earth. So, grab your guns and join the Helldivers. We need you. Throw bodies at the bodies. That's it. That's my public service announcement.
Fair. As well, some of the creatures of we should. I mean, since we're doing updates here, we've got an update on the one from last week. You weren't here for that, but we did cover Nintendo's most recent fuckery involving Palworld.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't. The problem that you have is and this is one of the challenges. So we've moved into the postmodern world, and you say, why is it that we've moved into the postmodern world? And shit like this is why, right? Oh my god, that's loud. Hold on.
Well, and what's happened too, in the meanwhile, is that Terraria has partnered with Palworld, so there's going to be a great big update coming through, too. And
I think they partnered with them earlier too.
Mm-hmm. There's going to be like a whole new island and a whole bunch of new monsters as well. So
really,
yeah, like this is a big deal thing, not just who knows? They might even
it's kind of crazy to me, but yeah. So what I was saying is that
Mm-hmm.
Modernism fell because a lot of the institutions started doing skeezy shit like this, and the end result was that nobody trusts them. You can't just turn around and go out and sue somebody who comes up with a really cool game that is ideologically distinct because you go and catch monsters. Because monster catching has been in games since the early 2000s. And it was before Pokemon, right? Like, there was Monster Rancher in the 90s. Yeah, I think you had Digimon as a concept. Obviously, Pokemon's the one that did it, I don't want to say it's first in best dressed, but they are one of the first that turned it into like a real true what we would consider an RPG with levels and building and all this other stuff.
No, sure. But as you say, you've got Digimon, which is basically, right at the same time. And then
Digimon's right at the same time, Monster Rancher's right at the same time. Lots of different things there. and yes, I will give them that Pal World is very similar to Pokemon, but it's also a completely different game. It's functionally different. It is
Quite.
a third person perspective, like, you know, go out and do things with your monsters. Your monsters have a lot more of direct interaction with the player, like in terms of utility. They've got all the mining and manufacturing stuff. But like monster fighting games is not a new thing, and stuff like this is why we can turn around. We can look at the scientists for COVID. We can look at the scientists for climate change. Well, guess what? They fucked us the same way Nintendo is fucking us. If they could have just taken the fact that somebody else came up with something that is profitable, like, and lived with it, it wouldn't, you wouldn't have this people upset. Now the question is how much damage is this going to do the Nintendo brand, and the answer is I don't think it'll do much, which is unfortunate.
It is. Now that
But
said, Pal World has become big enough to keep the fight up instead of having
that's
to
true.
fold. So in the end, if they can keep the fight up and they can, see it to the end, they've got some
We win.
really strong arguments.
Yes, they do. He's not like a little person.
Okay. Oh yeah, Ed's was some pool balls or what have
Oh
you.
my dog is all excited because it's the time of year where he gets to stick his head out the window while being on the couch.
Sounds quite comfy. Or at least dog comfy.
Indeed.
As you do, as you do. Top tier dog living, as you might say.
That's exactly right.
There you go. There you go. You could ask for nothing more than a couple of steaky bites. So, anywho,
And
hmm?
yeah, so my wife was telling me that I could technically open the window larger for him because it was storming earlier today. So
Ah,
all the good smells in the air, and he doesn't. He's really just trying to put up a show because he doesn't want to go to bed yet.
no, fair, fair.
Yeah.
So, I've got in vaguely related pet news. I've actually got an update on something we covered a while ago, and that's going to be Peanut and Fred also from New York. That's going to be Peanut the squirrel for anyone that is somehow not familiar. So we've got a release from Judicial Watch. I'll include a link to the thread, which includes the link to the Judicial Watch files and everything as well itself. But long and short, they got 163 pages of records out of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and interestingly, the plans were already set in motion. Like as we surmised, the plans were already in motion to euthanize the squirrel and the raccoon as soon as they were able, and that's exactly what they did. So they sent in 12 officers on a raid to seize these animals, in which they had already long since made the decision to end its life because, well, they did. Just is there anything in here on the reasoning? If there was anything on that, let me check the incident report here. As a complainant, 2 items of wildlife property were seized to be held. Seized and transferred to redacted. Oh, lovely. Oh, and they seized a fellow's rifle that apparently he owned. Complaints of unlawful possession, and that's all they really had. So, off of a complaint of unlawful possession, they had. Yep, that's it. Allegations of unlawful possession of a squirrel and a raccoon, and that Longo did not possess a wildlife rehabilitator's license. But as we have reported, he was in the process of attaining that license.
Yep. That is that was very sad.
And we've got. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they've got nothing on here. It's utter bullshit. It's like, yeah. I'll include a link to the Judicial Watch just directly so that anybody that wants to can read up on that, because this is it really was and is a complete shit show, and people really deserve better for themselves and for their pets, because you know, whether it's a family member to you or whether it's property, the law exists for a fucking reason and should be respected, especially when it comes down to the state, fucking with you and yours. That's the most important time for things to be considered properly. Oh, speaking of the
Yes,
state
indeed.
fucking with people, some funny stuff happened today. Um, there was oh shit, what was the thing? Some global summit or something. European Political Community Summit was in Albania, and Macron was being very handsy, super super handsy, like giving hugs and holding hands with every person that he possibly could. Just I don't know, maybe it's just something with Macron and liking to hug men. Read into that what you will. But anyway, when he got to Erdogan, PM, is it president or PM? Well, what? Oh, president, yeah, President Erdogan. He went over, gave him a slap on the shoulder, how you do, shook his hand, and Erdogan just kind of held on for about 30 seconds,
Yeah, I saw that. That
and
was funny.
it's
That
kind of
was
it's
funny
kind of
shit.
funny. It's like, what what are you doing, Macron? Come on. No, no, I don't feel like playing your games. And it's just kind of a funny clip. So I'll include the link to that, because it's always good for a giggle when you can watch world leaders clown on each other, especially when it's not Trump, because he's doing that shit all the time.
Ah, yes. Yes, indeed.
Oh, speaking of getting clowned on, did you hear that they finally released the Robert Hur interview with Biden?
Yes, they released part of it.
True,
And
not the
by the
full
way, I
thing.
think this is a lot more. They didn't release it. They leaked it. Um, but I think this is actually a more of a somewhat devious, albeit justified, but devious attempt. They're essentially going to go after, I think, the auto pen argument, um, which is who signed. Basically,
There,
are a lot of
that is
the
an
executive orders
important question.
or the pardons legitimate? And so, uh, the argument that you're going to have, obviously, we had her say we can't go after Biden because he's not mentally there, right? And we all saw him at the debate, so we all kind of know it. But when you have one of the things that's been happening in kind of the blog space is there's a whole lot of people challenging Democrats and saying, "What did you know and when did you know it?" Right? Which is a very very relevant question
And we also have a lot
to.
of dodging from the usual suspects of, I only just found out just today that Biden wasn't all there.
Right, right.
Uh
That's
huh.
that is happening. However, when you look at something like this, it leaked. So those files are not something that somebody had as like a personal repertoire or something like that. That's stuff that the DOJ held. And they explicitly refused to give it to Congress when Congress asked for it because they didn't want it getting out. So obviously somebody that attitude has changed. Somebody wants to get it out. So the question is why bring it out? Right? Biden's already lost. That's not, you don't need to humiliate the man. So the only real reason why you would bring it out is if you're building towards something else. And I think that what we've seen in all of this is that I think they're going to build towards the pardons weren't valid, the executive orders weren't valid. We essentially didn't have a president. And to be fair, I think that there is a legitimate question of criminal intent when it comes to the DNC and the Democratic Party. If they knew at the time that he was not mentally competent and they ran him again, right? And they just hoped he could pull it together for whatever. That is absolutely subversion of the government. So my guess would be that you're going to have them systematically go and overturn, particularly the pardons on like the J6 committee and a lot of the Biden administration officials and all that other stuff that, hey, we didn't do anything wrong, and they're going to be using stuff like this. But to do this, you need to make sure that it's a realistically believable thing. You need it to be a case of, yeah, okay, so Hurr's team sat there and said they weren't going to prosecute him because he was incompetent. We all saw him at the debate, but what was he really like, you know, during the day talking to federal prosecutors? And this is that kind of thing. This
Mm.
builds the case that he was not at the helm of the government, which means that uh, which, given that there is a 25th Amendment and all that stuff, and given that they were going to run him again and somebody had to know and yada yada, that there is a legitimate potential criminal case of people sitting there and abusing his signature and people subverting the presidency and a lot of this stuff that pardons and whatnot are going to go away, and that requires public support. You're not going to be able to make go for kind of heretofore and never seen arguments without public support of that, and that's going to require understanding where you're coming from. And it can't just be a partisan thing. It has to be video evidence of him during the day at his job, not late at night in an interview that they can dismiss it, because that was their argument was everybody has a bad day. Well, no, it's not a bad day.
Yeah, it just happens every time
Right.
he did an interview. But yeah, it happens. Sure.
Right, exactly. So that's what they're going to build towards. They're going to build towards a whole bunch of people came out and told you that he just had a bad day, and it wasn't just a bad day. This was ongoing. People knew about it, and they did not sit there and go through it for a political advantage, and that is probably criminal.
It's a
So I think
pretty
that's what we're
easy
looking
argument
at.
to make.
I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're talking about them building the public support case for a criminal case into other stuff without having to, like, they're gonna that's where they're gonna be. And some of this is going to be a, you know again, it's what did you know, when did you know it? That's obviously the key component there. But who is it they're going to be raising this against? And most likely the individual or individuals that they are choosing to raise this issue with are going to be people that would be perceived as solely political targets. And I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be like a Jill Biden case. I think it's going to be a case of, uh, you know, major DNC people. So who's that going to be? Who are they going after that actually matters in the Democrat Party?
That's a very good question. On that note, I don't know if you caught it, but they did go ahead and oust young Master Hogg. He is no longer the vice chair. And
So I saw, yes.
yeah, so that did not last for the one time he actually stands up for men. Uh,
Well, I think that the Democrats are trying to figure out how to come back from the woke shit. I don't think they know how. And
Seems like not.
realistically, huh?
It does. That seems to be the case.
I think that's what they were trying to do, and I think that's like Hogg was kind of there too. He's kind of in
Yeah,
the
he's.
case that we're gonna have to go for is the Democrat socialist case.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to basically be making the argument that we're going to make the government work for people and not this weird shit. I think the one of the more useful Trump campaign ads that exemplifies this is uh, Trump's for you, not they them, or whatever the frig that was that he did.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of what Hogg was trying to argue that the Dems need to do.
Well, they need to do quite a lot, but I mean, anything at all is basically a step in the right direction for them, and they just keep kind of taking steps in the wrong direction.
They do.
Which, I mean, I guess more power to you. You know, you've got a diminishing group of individuals that even really are kind of your core demographic, and with the deportations going as they are, you know that demographic is also kind of shrinking. Oh,
Well, see, the Hispanic demographic has never really been their demographic, right? Like they're basically going to be pulling all of the as soon as you pull the welfare people out, you're basically losing out on anybody that you thought you could kind of force through the citizenship barrier.
hmm. Well, yeah, that wouldn't be the first time. Probably won't be the last. Oh, on a very vaguely related note to Democratic history, one of the last antebellum uh, plantation homes burned down in the last few days, and you know the usual people that you would expect to be upset at the destruction of history are upset at the destruction of history, and then the usual folks that you would expect to be hooting and hollering like excited chimpanzees at the destruction of history are indeed hooting and hollering at the destruction of American history. Go figure.
So nothing's changed.
um, in that regard, no. Yeah, it hasn't. But hey, you know, it is what it is. So let's see here. Did we get to? Oh no, we didn't get to, because this has happened since then. So you know, in this crackdown on the border, we do want refugees and immigrants and the like to do things the right way. You know, apply at their nearest asylum, at their nearest not asylum, embassy, or consulate, or what have you. You know, at the nearest border, however you're going to do it. And in this case, we had it's either 58 or 59 South Africans that, you know, did things the right way. They're facing, you know, racial injustice. They're worried about literally being killed, literally having their property expropriated by the government. And so they applied for asylum like so many others do, and seeing the rapidly advancing state of decay in South Africa, it's not an unreasonable call to make to maybe push these people to the head of the line. There's lots of people waiting, and you know, if you've got people that are in greater danger, maybe get them out a little sooner. Especially when, you know, you have I don't know, Ramaphosa himself, the president of South Africa, singing "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer," and then just
You know, I take umbrance that he is not singing. He's
okay, fair. He is
like every time I've watched that video, they're like, "It's a top hit song." There's no singing. They are doing a weird like dance thing,
mm,
but where they're kind of like shuffling back and forth between their feet. But no, it is not a song. It is not a
not
dance.
really.
It is.
It's
It
much more of a
is.
chant.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably more accurate. But it's not a song. It's not a. They aren't singing it. It's not anything like that. So I take umbrage when people are like, "It's a hit, popular song." No, no, that's like a mantra. That's like a chant. That's like a daily. That's like a prayer,
Yeah,
if you will.
like burn the witch, burn the witch. You know, it's one of those kind of
Yeah.
things.
So it's interesting.
But that said, we have actually reported on South Africa quite a few times, and the situation there is utterly dire. They have any number of completely racist laws. And just for anyone that's going to want to help tear down these arguments when people make them with you, because this is a fairly common occurrence these days, is the Boers came to an area. Point one, the Boers came to an area that was unsettled, uncolonized, empty of anything but flora and fauna. There were no people there at all.
Yep.
So they arrive at this place. that's not terrible or anything, but not as well suited as Middle Africa is to life, and they make it into a pretty comfortable place to live. They get the rocks out of the soil, they get the livestock there because they actually have seasons, being so far south. They get things together, get everything working. And then the Bantu people, they start moving south, and they see this nice civilization that's coming together, and they set themselves up, kind of on the outskirts. And the civilization grows over time. The Bantu peoples as well, kind of leeching off of the leavings of the Boers, and there was one native African group that they ended up allying with, that, or tribe or something. I don't know the exact term. Not the Bantu, but it was somebody that was like an enemy of the Bantu, or that the Bantu just wanted to destroy, and they kept them alive, basically. So, fast forward a bunch of time, and this Boer, well, you certainly can't call it a colony, because you're not colonizing, you're just settling an unsettled area. So this Boer settlement that becomes a country of its own
Well, I
right.
mean, I would still say it's a colony, right? Like if we launch a starship to someplace else, it's still a colony, right?
Yes,
It's not colonialism.
well, it's not, but I say that it's not, in that they didn't really work themselves like a colony. They worked like a whole new thing. So that's
Yeah.
why I choose the term that I do. They weren't trying to be like, hey, this is New Dutch, the new Denmark. They were like, no, this is we're doing our own thing, a whole new thing. And well, it worked quite well for a long time. And then they decided to allow the Bantu to be a part of civilization, or not civilization, a part of their a part of things there, not to a degree, and that was apartheid, and that was the way things worked for the longest time. They were able to raise up the Bantu to rather a degree. They got them to a point where they could live in and around a country where there were nuclear facilities, nuclear weapons, and a burgeoning space program. Thankfully, by the by, I don't know if it was 3 or 5, but the 3 to 5 nuclear weapons were disarmed and destroyed before apartheid was done away with. Thank fuck, because those would have definitely made their way to Iran or some fucking where. But anywho, we fast forward, and then we have an end to apartheid, and then the world says, oh, South Africa is now poised to actually be a great global player. And of course, that was the line. I think it was 97. I can't remember directly. 93 or 97, when apartheid ended, and then the downfall began. And from there, we've been watching it happen in real time. So one of the common arguments that is put forward in that, no, they're not taking the land from the farmers, and this isn't a white genocide, is that it is illegal to list the racial characteristics for crime in South Africa. Now, we can actually come to a reasonable conclusion based on 87% of farms as of today. It used to be more. 87% of farms are owned by white landowners. Now, that number cannot grow. Literally impossible, because of new laws that require that a business enterprise be mostly black owned. Because they are now the majority. They've outbred and outpaced the Boers, so they get to decide how things run in this Boer country. And I do encourage you to hop on a Google Street View and look at some of the earliest pictures of streets in Johannesburg. And then look for the most recent ones and look for the earliest ones. And it makes Detroit look like it has been very well maintained, is all I'll say.
You know what the saddest part of this whole thing is? It is like, one, we can see in studies that racial groups have a significant preference for in racial groups, with the exception of white people.
Mm-hmm.
And my first girlfriend was black and Hopi, and so like I don't care about race at all. It doesn't faze me. I'm perfectly happy to interact with people. I've had, obviously I tolerate Craig, and he's a Jew, which is kind of like black for scientists.
Hey, well, yeah, no. The thing is, though, he actually does work. So
Does he? Did he get a job?
I didn't say he he works. I just said he does work.
Oh, okay. All right.
I,
I
you know,
guess we got to be careful. Got to be careful what we give him
we are
for
honest in our
for credit.
reporting here on the Fake Untitled podcast.
But yeah, no, like we the saddest part about this whole entire thing is as time goes on, it raises the real question of should we just revert back to ethno states, right? Because we have if the idea that white folk people have is that we can all be friends, we can all be equals, we can all play nice together, and that's just something that most people don't agree with outside of us. And so maybe it was a mistake to say, "Hey, we're gonna share everything and do universal communities and all that other stuff." And in reality, everybody would just prefer to have their own stuff. The only problem is that, uh, well, I guess I shouldn't say it's a problem. It's just one of the oddities there is the black community has largely enforced this on their own. Um, and within the black community, they've just trashed their own stuff, and then they turn around and they blame white people for it who aren't even living there, right? It goes
Now,
to
to be fair,
it's the white flight versus the gentrification versus the this
that
versus
is
the
fair,
that
but
or
there's
whatever.
something I need to add to what you're saying there, and that is, and you may or may not agree with me, but black entertainment television and other related medias have been instrumental in creating that narrative.
Yeah, no, I know. Like that's the thing. Well, it's not just them. It's also
Well, that's why I say
uh,
related.
the
There's
left
quite a
wing
few.
political party, right? Like the left wing political party is the party of grievances.
I mean,
That
just
I
a few
think
weeks
is kind
ago,
of
I quoted LBGA on what he said. That one's not up on YouTube. That's I'm not that chintzy, or I'm not flying that close to the sun. Oh, by the way, 2 episodes in on YouTube, and we still got no strikes. So nice.
well, that could just be that nobody cares.
It's getting good views, so we'll see. Anyway, that said, share those links around, everybody. Make sure you're subscribed and following and liking and commenting and all that good shit. But yeah, it's the thing. It is kind of the insularity of the black community that has exacerbated a lot of these issues. And I've personally said that this could be resolved in 3 generations. It would be a matter of just focusing on the black community and uplifting them to the highest degree possible with the best education you can, the strictest rules possible, an absolutely strict meritocratic system.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the issue, right? Like, I don't think we already have a very good education. Well, we did.
Do we?
I think, man, I think there's ways that we could have our education
We
system be
could.
better.
Could is a key
But,
word, and we
but
absolutely could.
the issue that you have right now is that all of those we keep throwing money at this. We keep trying to do some sort of uplift project, and I don't think that's the problem. I think
Oh
the
yeah, it's
problem
not
is
a matter of
cultural.
throwing money at it.
Right. I think the issue is cultural. We have a bunch of people who are fed through a variety of different um, cultural institutions that they are oppressed and that they're disadvantaged, and then they react as if you were told that, you would be not so happy about it either.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of understand it. But the problem that you have is what do you do? Like how do you where do you pull out of that tailspin? We have people saying
And that's why I say it
that
would
it's
take three
perfectly
generations. You've
we have
got
people who
to
are
you've got to educate up one whole generation so that they are of a higher standard. Then they've got to have kids who they raise in that tradition, and then their kids will not only have benefited from parents that were raised in a different system, but also have grandparents And in addition, they will have the genes of people that have moved forward with educating themselves. So,
Yeah, but I mean, like all of that is contingent. The problem that you have, and right, this isn't a universal issue, and that's another part of the hard part.
also that, yes.
Like we're talking about essentially the ghetto area and the folks who have decided to embrace thug life and all that stuff. Um, and there's a whole class of black folk and Hispanic folk that they literally they do everything they're supposed to do, and none of this falls on them in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, I think there's actually a social media campaign called, what is it? They call it black fatigue, is the cultural term, which is interesting. And a lot of this is every once in a while you see a white person come out and talk about it, but most of it is black people getting sick and tired of other black people sitting there and basically shitting everything on everything and everyone everywhere, and never taking responsibility for their own life. And that's kind of the thing. So the question is, how do you deal with those people? Like you do have people who are going to be like you're not who are going to be on the lower side of personal aptitude, right?
Sure.
And uh, when you have folks on the lower side of personal aptitude, how do you handle that? Right? They're going to be looking for everything because we aren't comfortable having the discussion that intellectual traits are not universally distributed. Because we don't want to talk about that. Like, how do you handle the folks who are necessarily not gifted with great genes? Uh, because they're going to sit there and try to find all kinds of different ways that it's not their fault for their current situation. And I don't know what the answer is, because skin color is an easy thing for people to team up and divide on, and we learned this
Well,
a long time ago.
I've got one, and it seems it's been borne out in Israel, at least to a degree. The average IQ of your average Ashkenazi Jew was some 20 points lower, like 40 years ago, and they did just what I said. They got super strict on things and made sure that their education systems would get the job done. And
I
in three
thought the
generations,
Ashkenazi Jews have always generally had a 15-point lead.
not no no that's relatively recent genetically. Actually, quite recent
Really?
genetically. Yes, it's a fascinating thing. Like basically, when Israel was formed, they were like, we need a class of smart people, and the smart people got together and figured out what they needed to do to kind of not genetically modify, but kind of select for more smart people. When you've got more smart people are being born, and we've learned, in recent years that a lot of this is inheritable. You go with a person that's got a low IQ, they get their IQ up through time. You're only going to get so smart, but you've raised the bar for your child by getting yourself to a smarter place. To put it in the simplest of terms, anyway. But I mean, that's what modern genetics is telling us. That if you
Well, I mean
if you go to
that's not modern genetics. We've known that IQ is a
well, yeah, it's
genetic
like
trait for a while.
yeah, you can you get a good strong horse, and it could have started out as not so strong a horse, but it's going to have a stronger child than the one before. Every generation's built on the last, so it's. I guess people think of it as like eugenics or whatever, and I guess it kind of is, but
I mean,
shouldn't we
if
be
you're
trying to
selecting for
make
it,
every?
it is eugenics.
Well, it is, but I mean, what the fuck's wrong with trying to have the best
Well,
next
the
generation
thing
that we
is, I
can?
think a lot of this stuff would be self-correcting if we got rid of the welfare system.
Very possibly, or radically changed it, to where you have here's your money, do with it. This is the amount you have. Good luck.
Yeah, lump sum. I am a big fan of the idea of. I prefer the idea of lump sum systems rather than EBT cards and continuous debit.
Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, go, no, take it to your dealer, get all the fat you want, go for it. Now you're not going to eat.
And
You're
then
also probably going to die, but they, either way, problem solves itself, right?
Yes, it does.
I mean, but pulling this back to full circle on race, the Episcopal Church has
Ugh.
been a partner of the U.S. government for some 40 odd years in their goal to assist refugees and people fleeing, social persecution and violence, all these awful things. And they were tasked with, after the countless thousands that they've done over just the past few years, they were asked if they would please resettle these, 58 or 59 individuals that are, in direct danger, not only of, having their properties taken, but, actual physical danger. The women and children in danger of being, raped or killed. The men as well. Not so much raped, but certainly killed. And they said no. The Episcopal Church said no. As a matter of fact, in the words of Episcopal Church Bishop Sean Rowe, it's against what we stand for to help white refugees fleeing South Africa. Wow, Pastor.
That was
that's a big statement, Father.
Yeah, that was a surprise to see that they chose to go that way.
It's like so the Episcopal Church is their stance is white people, no, not really not really children
this goes
of God.
Back to the same thing. Like it's stuff like this that makes me think that, hey, maybe the multicultural project was that I personally believe in.
Could it be
maybe it wasn't a great idea
that multiculturalism isn't our strength?
Well, it's not. I see. That's another. Those are like loose, useless phrases like that. They don't help anybody.
No.
It never lets us confront stuff because we
it's
say,
an
"Oh, it's our
fucking
strength."
Platitude.
It's nothing. Yeah, that's all it is. It's no different than like motivational self-help phrases that you throw at yourself for whatever reason. So shit like that. It sounds. There's a great term for it. It is.
Oh, what, self-aggrandizing?
No. It's actually like a legit clinical research term. It's it might be pseudo-intellectual bullshit.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the term, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Or yeah, I think it's pseudo-intellectual bullshit. But it's phrases that sound really good but convey nothing is the short version of it, and it's a perfect example of that. Diversity is our strength. What strength? In what way? Right? It's kind of like you listen to Tim Pool occasionally.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
So it's kind of like when do you ever watch the Timcast IRL or just listen to his day shows?
I catch him when I'm able.
So if you're watching the Timcast IRL thing, it's like when Ian comes up and Ian sits there and talks about graphene. And he says graphene is stronger than steel. What the fuck does that mean, bro? Mm-hmm. Like, is it stronger in compression? Is it stronger in tension? Is it stronger at scale? Is it stronger in torsion? Is it like, is that the plastic deformation region larger? Is the embrittlement region smaller? Like, what exactly does that mean? Mm-hmm. And it's shit like that is what diversity is our strength. What strength? Like, diversity is our strength in terms of what? Like, is this a metaphorical strength? I mean, personally, I think intellectual superiority is a strength. Physical superiority is a strength. I don't see how diversity is a strength. What's stronger about it?
Yeah, that is kind of the unanswered question. That is begged by the statement, as it were. If you've got the guts to ask it, even.
Indeed.
On that note, actually, I've got a really great tweet here from Seamus Coughlin, noted Catholic, and that's going to be it's so perfect, and I don't understand why we don't see more people on the left asking this question, because it's a very important one. You see, well, anyway, I'll just read it off here. Liberals will be horrified to learn that there were millions and millions of unvetted border crossings under Biden. We literally have no idea how many of them were white South Africans. It's possible that 60 more got in. Have they even
I
considered
love
this?
Seamus. I love fucking Seamus. I disagree with him. Like, I'm sure that if it was like a personal discussion on philosophical beliefs, we'd probably be very much at odds. But he has a brilliant
He's a witty
satirical
guy.
way. He
He's
is a
he's got a
witty
wit
guy.
to him. He does.
He is a witty dude.
But yeah, I mean that it does. It begs the question. How many other white people might have snuck in? There
Right?
might there might have been some Canadians. Could you imagine? They there might have even been Canadians who don't speak French.
I know. I know. Could be wild.
They could be hiding among us right now, and the only thing we would know is if you walked up to them and you said, "Hey, buddy."
Yep.
They walk among us. They walk among us, Steve. They do.
They probably do.
There could be Canadians in your city right now, dear listener.
But do the Canadians really walk among us? Or do they boot around?
Do they? Indeed. We don't even know. We don't even know. So I've got this bit here from Matthew Iglesias, a writer. People probably heard of him. He works for a company called Bloomberg, not the most noted right-leaning of organizations, being founded by a man by the name of Bloomberg, who is also not of the most right-leaning of associations. Anyway, this author for Bloomberg, he says something incredibly thoughtful. And I just got to read it off to you. It's from the 12th of May, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This Afrikaner refugee thing is such obvious bait. Just be chill. And, well, they couldn't. They just couldn't do it. And they're still today talking shit about these people. And on top of that, we now have Ramaphosa saying literally today that they are cowards for running, which is an interesting thing to say about people that are trying to claim that they're refugees. That might lend some credence to it. But then there's this other thing that might lend some credence to that as well. That being that I just put through a law that if you speak of the white genocide, it will be considered an act of treason. So there's that.
I mean, the difficulty here, I know obviously there's been reporting on multiple different people have reported multiple different ways. The government sits there and says there's nothing there, but obviously you turn to a government and say, "Hey, are you guys committing genocide?" They're not gonna be, "Oh yeah, totally." We're totally purging those motherfuckers, right? But at the same time, like it is kind of the actual data that we have shows that it's not this crazy mass murder type thing going on.
Yeah, I mean it's not Auschwitz. It's
not Auschwitz or anything like that.
but what
It's
it
basically
is these farms. They get something terrible happens. Oh no, and a bunch of innocent people are killed. And then the owner of the farm, being one of those people that was killed, well, nobody. Then the state just comes in and yoink, we'll take that. And it just
and that's the difficult part because the state will turn around and say, "Hey, only 12 farmers were killed." Well, what's the ratio of farmers to not farmers, right? What's the per capita rate
right.
there? And then
Per
how
capita.
much?
No wonder
How
they're having so much
difficult
trouble with the numbers.
does it have to be to, you know? Oh, how much effort has to be had in order to um in order to sit there and actually go out there and kill them. And that's kind of really the thing, because farmers aren't inherently like they're not in the middle of a city, right? So if 12 of them are killed, that you can say, hey, this was just part of the general crime wave, but that's pretty hard to have that be part of your general crime wave. You know what I mean? They're not there. They're not in the thick of it. It's not a
Yeah, you have a group
oh
of people with, automatic weapons, cell jammers, and
right.
other
And
advanced
so
electronic
that's the
equipment,
difficult part.
and then, yeah.
And then you got political leaders sitting there and chanting that like we should be able to legally kill those people. Like
Yeah, or
imagine
going on
imagine for
interviews
eh,
on international television saying, we have not decided to do violence to them yet. Or, sorry,
eh,
we have decided not to kill them yet. His exact words.
imagine like if you turn around and if you had Trump show up, right? And Trump said, "Yeah, we're just, and he at his rallies like kill the darkies." Like that would be fucking insane. That would be insane.
Yet Malema.
They'll turn around, and this always pisses me off.
Sorry,
They
Ramaphosa.
can they can turn around, and by they I mean the media, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they will turn to you and they will say, "We have decoded the top secret dog whistle of Donald Trump." And they act like they're, the intelligentsia of a Dan Brown novel. And meanwhile, the very first time that something goes like anti-left or anti-progressive narrative, they're just like, we don't understand. They sit there with a thumb up their ass like a fat kid with a learning disability. And it's just fucking wild.
Well,
It
not to
happens every
mention,
time.
the fucking fact of who exactly is it that hears dog whistles, asshole? You keep
Right,
talking about these dog
exactly.
whistles that you fucking keep hearing and nobody else is, so.
Yep. But like that's the thing is, so we turn around and we sit there with the Afrikaners and or the African chant there, where they're sitting there and saying, "Kill the boar, kill the farmer." You're like, well, motherfucker, like that's not vague. It's not cloaked. Oh, it's just a chant. Okay. Well, don't tell me about the top secret dog whistle at a Donald Trump campaign that you heard. If you have got this guy over here explicitly stating it, that he wants to kill a group of people just solely based on their race. Like, don't come in and say, "Oh my God, look at what Donald Trump conceived of." Just turn around and say, "Hey, it's just a song. It's just a chant. It's just a whatever." Because none of what they've claimed is anywhere near as explicit as that.
Yeah, no, not even
It's just
remotely. Like, not even the, perhaps the chance of certain people that were outside of the building on January 6th came up to near that level. But even then, even the worst of it, at least as far as what I've seen, played, was not even that bad. Like, the worst of it wasn't that bad. And we're talking, federal fucking, well, not necessarily agents, but assets that were out there quite literally working to, gas the crowd up. And it's still not that bad. It's like, it's, it's quite something. It's quite something. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But
indeed.
uh, this one didn't pass, unfortunately, which is a shame. I believe we had some like 7 Republicans that said no to the big, beautiful reconciliation bill. But we are seeing interesting movement on these sort of things. So the next one, now here's the funny part: the ones that were against it because it didn't cut spending enough, which, fair argument. But
Well, no, see, this is a constant debate, and I'm not entirely sure what the right way to go is, right? Because on one hand, you have people who say, "Hey, I'm going to be a purist. I am going to wait until I get something exactly what I want." And then you got the folks who say, "Hey, why don't we do incremental stuff here?" Um, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I kind of lean towards incremental improvements are still improvements.
that they
And
are.
And it's not like if you turn around and didn't get the spending cuts that were in there, that you can't sit there and go for the next round of spending cuts. Like, I'd rather have a little bit of spending cut. Like, I'd rather cut out something, even if it's not everything, just something
Sure.
to like take some of that funding stream away.
Well,
And it really
absolutely.
makes
You're chipping away at a great beast at the bare minimum.
right, exactly. Like, so I don't know if I agree with that line of argument that it just wasn't enough, right? Like, if you turn around and said, "Look, yes, if their argument was something along the lines of, yes, they were cutting some spending, and I would have happily signed for that, but look at all of these other things that they were doing," like, I can defend that. I can
Mm-hmm.
defend that you didn't bless off on the thing that you wanted because it comes attached to it's a poison pill, right? Like,
Yeah. The thing about it
yeah,
is, though, we have the majority in both houses right now, so there shouldn't be any poison pills making their way up.
right, exactly.
Shouldn't
So
be.
so take what wins you can get and just acknowledge that not everything's going to go your way all at once.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. And in a actually, it's a really good segue into another kind of two stories I'm wanting to talk about, and that's going to be the what is it? Hearing, yeah, the HPA, the Hearing Protection Act. So it's back up if you hadn't been aware, and for those not aware, this would basically remove suppressors from the NFA and just make them the same as a scope or a trigger group or any other accessory, a laser, whatever you might flashlight that you might put on your firearm, which is exactly how it should be and how it is everywhere else in the world. So we had a number of folks on there that I wouldn't use the term betrayal. I would I would use something slightly different. But anyway, we had a number of individuals that, and I can't remember the exact silencer company, but one of the silencer companies out there that was suppressor companies, whatever the fuck, was kind of working not for the proper implementation of this. They're saying no, let's get rid of the $200 tax stamp or take it down to a $5 tax stamp on NFA things, but leave it on there. Leave it on there. Which, of course, that is a betrayal of their constituents and all these people, myself included, who have been pushing for these reforms for so long because you know it's a bullshit that this thing. Oh, also by the by, we've got the FBI and I think also the FBI, the ATF, updating their carry gear to include suppressors to protect their hearing, which on their latest acquisitions. So it's great for them and great for their hearing, but not something that we're allowed. So anyhow, the Ways and Means Committee on the 12th, they almost got it through. It would have, well, it would have done this kind of the bullshit. Like I said, it would have taken the tax stamps down, but it wouldn't have gotten rid of any of the onerous hoops or anything. It wouldn't have changed anything really. It would have just made it slightly less expensive and basically kept the big players as the big players. So what happened with that? Who exactly was all of this? So in the reconciliation process, the thing basically got killed instead of letting it go forward as it's betrayed garbage. So let me see here. Yeah. So we had Republican-led group led by David Kustoff out of Tennessee, who changed the tax stamp. But yeah, he says he was using the Byrd rule. Of course, Byrd rule here, as reading through the article, Byrd rule states that only tax issues can be done through reconciliation. Speaking to people in the Senate, they did not believe that removing suppressors from the NFA would violate the Byrd rules. Said SCOTUS has already determined the NFA to be law. Well, that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, we could be looking at another vote tomorrow or Monday. We'll see. Well, I guess, yeah, they wouldn't do a vote on Sunday, so they'll probably, if all goes well, they'll fix the bullshit tonight, tomorrow, get a new vote for us on Monday, and, maybe actually fix this bullshit. Get suppressors removed from the NFA where they should be so that we can all be more responsible gun owners. But another part of that reconciliation bill that did not go through, that big beautiful bill, was a 5% tax on abroad sent remittances, unless it was sent as a verified U.S. citizen, in which case that 5% tax on remittances would be able to be claimed back as a tax credit. Obviously, this is aimed at people that are trying to kind of make money here, send it back home, because however much India is a perfect example. You can work here in some absolute dog shit IT job on your H-1B as basically a slave, get minimal wages, and go back home after 10 years of slave labor and live like a king for the rest of your life, basically. So, decisions, I guess. Which leads us into the other one. We need to fucking fix this H-1B bullshit. We abso-fucking-lutely do. And as a bit of a segue there, since we are talking about the whole illegals bit and judges being weird about that and all, there was a judge that was weird about that. A judge saw some ICE agents in the courtroom, and she's like, "Oh, goodness gracious! Well, I can't allow this guy that beats his wife and and is involved in human trafficking and drug smuggling and the the illegal weapons trade, which, if I'm being honest, no such thing. But beyond that, the rest of it's pretty fucked up. And, never minding, too, that as a probationary member of MS-13, this dude was well on his way to be doing a lot worse things than that. Because the probationary members don't generally have the whole MS-13 across the face bit. They'll usually get something more innocuous and work their way up with bigger and more ostentatious tattoos as they advance in the gang. But anyway, speaking of folks advancing in the gang, perhaps this new prisoner at Wisconsin State Pen will, maybe she'll find her way into their good graces. The person I'm referring to, of course, is Judge Hannah Dugan. She has been indicted by a grand jury, and so is remanded to custody, and we are going to see her tried. This is going to be very interesting.
Of course, I do love her. I do love her argument, which is that she did it as part of the course of her duties, basically echoing the exact same thing that Trump got from the Supreme Court, which is, first off, that's like basically that was an executive privilege argument, not a anybody can do anything, anytime, anywhere. It was the status of the president doing presidential things is presumed to be lawful. That's not to say that it can't be lawful. It's just that the remedy is the Senate. Mm-hmm. She does not have that.
Nope, not at all.
So it'll be interesting. That is I appreciate that she did that, but like that just points out that she was a hardcore lefty doing left-wing ideologue stuff, and it's just ironic.
And iconic.
I don't know. It is baffling to me that these people exist. I'm not saying that there aren't arguments to be made against the Trump organization or whatever the hell it is that you want to say, but there are limits and boundaries and shit, man.
Mm-hmm. There's a limit to anyone's patience and decency.
Presidential immunity does not apply to district judges.
No.
And even then, presidential immunity is not immunity from anything they do. It's just presumptive immunity.
Yeah, it's not even, and so much of it is untested too. and
It
they're
basically
often
states,
afraid to test the question.
well, you know, as I remember it, the argument the court made was that you have the Senate and Congress, and they can go prosecute people for crimes, but we can't have the states just willy nilly charging people with crimes for whatever they did in office that was part of an official act, which is a very reasonable and rational approach,
You'd
right?
think.
Like, we know that we have a politically divided society, so you can't just turn around and willy nilly charge people that you politically disagree with.
Okay, even if there has been a precedent set for it of late, that doesn't mean that it's right or honestly legal. Because really it's not, but no one did anything about it because they were basically all in on it. Oh, I've got a great one for you. You might have missed this one in just all the craziness of the last few weeks. And this one touches my heart. So the EPA has of just the last, I don't know, portion of my life been pretty stupid about most everything. And we've got a worthwhile update. It looks like the automatic start stop feature might be on the way out. That they're going to phase out the incentives that were put on there. Like if you put this on your car, it gains so many points towards being fucking whatever cafe roll bullshit they were trying to get it to hit.
I'm assuming that was the Obama admissions, where they turn around and they set like an emissions target of like 80 miles to gallon or something like that.
Yeah, and this is one of those. If we include this, we can take it down to where it doesn't have to be 80. It can be 72, and then they tick all the boxes and get it down to where
Right.
Whatever. Or the car. It's the same bullshit as why trucks keep getting bigger every year. It's
Why
like
is that they get bigger?
oh, they have to have a certain weight requirement to hit a fuel economy rating. So instead of getting better fuel economy, they just it has to weigh this much this year. Okay, got it. Oh, next year it has to weigh that much to. Okay, cool. It'll weigh that much more. Got it. Oh, the
Interesting.
2027 needs to weigh an extra 2,000 pounds. Not a problem. It will weigh an extra 2,000 pounds. Oh, you say we could do something with the miles per? No, no, no. It needs an extra 2,000 pounds. Done. And
Got it.
that's been how they've been rolling since Obama. Actually, it's been this dance of okay, so you've updated the rules, so we've got new rules we need to follow. Not you want us to build this kind of car, just so you've said we can't do this and we can't do that. Okay, so we'll make the customer happy as best we can. And well, this one will be a good thing. Although I am going to say this right now, I've said it plenty of other times, maybe not here, but in any of a number of other venues, the cafe rules have got to go. We can't build interesting fuel efficient cars with the current state of things. You can't have a light, safe, fuel efficient car that runs on an internal combustion engine. You can pick two of those. And that's just the way it is. And so they want all three, and you can't have all three in any sort of reasonable consumer car. And when you can have all three, you get shit like the fish carburetor and engines that run on water that may or may not exist and that, giant fucking corporations bury. So they may not even exist, but we're told they might. So what do, right? You do exactly the minimum that you need to keep building your shit exactly the way you want to build it so that people will buy it. And you run your car making monopoly just on and on each day. What crazy times. But speaking of crazy times, I have got. It depends here. If this is a disaster, if you're a Jim Cramer believer, then this is horrifying news. It'll really make you sad, but that would also mean that you're probably not super smart if you're, going with the the inverse Kramer index is the one that makes the money. So I guess if you go with the Kramer index, you like losing money. In this case, Jim Cramer, and I quote, "I can't believe some people on the internet think Bitcoin will go over 200,000 this year. It's not going to happen. It's just not." Well, crypto bros, good news. Good news. I think we can fairly easily bank on crypto hitting on Bitcoin at least hitting 200K or getting real close this year, because the inverse Kramer don't miss.
Oh, that's a good question. Will it? Will it not?
I mean, it broke 100.
I don't know.
And we're
It
just in May.
broke 100, but so the problem that you have, right, is the amount of Bitcoin that you can buy decreases with every increase in price.
Oh, true
right?
that. It is a finite resource.
That is the inherent problem. So equities, they can pretty easily appreciate in price because it's a share of a company. So if there's more value in that company, then congratulations, you've gotten an increase in share price. In the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is an alternate currency. And so while I'm not saying that it can't go to 200K, right, half of my portfolio right now has a 2x leveraged ETF for Bitcoin. I'm not saying that it can't go to 200K. I would be ecstatic if it went to 150K. But keep in mind that if Trump's successful, there is going to be far less incentive to the equity. If Trump's successful, the equity markets will improve, jobs will be off the charts, and there won't be as much necessarily value for Bitcoin.
That's a fair statement.
Right? That's. I'm not saying it's not going to hit that. I just guess. My guess is 150. I'd be happy. It's been sitting at around 100 since like October.
Not untrue.
And I would expect it to drop a little bit and to increase a little bit. So.
Fair. But it could, well, the inverse Kramer likes to hit, is all I'm saying. And,
it does.
And it's got a real strong, well, true. So we'll see. We'll just see. But, the man has a way of calling things in a very unique way that, well, let's just say, if you've put your money in the inverse Kramer, you're coming out well into the green. That's just the way it is. But moving on, because there's so much we could cover. We won't get to all of it, but we can hit a couple of interesting top notes that most of your other places aren't. Case in point, if you're listening to Timcast, which Tim Pool, great source of news. I'd actually recommend it. He's one of the more down the line people. He's ended up with this bit of a hint of a right leaning, but he's got a lot of his roots with him too. Being an old school Chicago dim guy. So it is what it is. But he's a good source of news. But that's kind of what we're here for, is to give you the depth that you just really aren't getting anywhere else. And with that said, they've got there was an attack in Poland on, what is this name of the place? The Marowilska Shopping Center in Warsaw. Some sort of arson or something. So, anyway, the suspects have since all been detained. Suspects are Ukrainian, interestingly. Obviously, this means that Russia was responsible. At least that's what Donald Tusk says, the esteemed leader of Poland, or whatever. But yeah, so the Ukrainian perpetrators have been caught, so that obviously means that it was done by Russia. So there's your update on that one. Those silly Ukrainians, always over there doing all that Russia stuff. And I guess in some interesting news, let me see here. I've got just a quick bit from a Kennedy interview where he was on what is this New Start 2024, and this is episode 117, and I'll include the clip here. It's about 4 minutes long. Long and short of it is the CDC was noticing a rise in autism around the time that the childhood vaccine schedule was being expanded quite rapidly. And they kind of kept it on the hush-hush and the down low. And now that someone else is at the head of that organization, these things are coming out. So long and short, the CDC knew that there was a rise of autism that seemed to correlate with the rise in the numbers of vaccines that children were getting.
I really, of all of the, so I talked a little bit about the postmodernism versus modernism thing and the failures of modernism, which led to postmodernism.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really hope that he's wrong on vaccines, because that would be,
It'll leave a
like,
bad
that would
taste in
be,
people's mouths for technology that is actually kind of
it
helpful.
will, yeah, well, it's not just that, like, because all of these pharmaceutical companies and health advisors and everybody else has basically campaigned that anybody who opposes vaccines is crazy. If it turns out that the crazies were right, like,
Again,
it will. Yeah, I know exactly. Again, it's one thing to have an acute duration thing like COVID, where people are trying to make flash decisions and they were wrong in their flash decisions. It's another thing if you have like chronic knowledge and it ends up, you know, you were lying the whole time.
mm-hmm, engenders a bit of distrust, you might say.
It does, right? Like I can understand the trans thing from the perspective that there's some folks who really want to be empathetic, and that's really what it is, right? It's I think
Yeah,
they're
agree
wrong,
or not,
but
you can
they're trying
understand
to
the
be
point they're making.
they're trying to be nice people.
Sure.
And so trying to be nice people is not, you know, they're bias is a thing. It exists. It influences our decision making. It influences how we weight information that comes into us. Stuff that agrees with our perception will be weighted more favorably. Stuff that disagrees with our perception will be weighted less favorably. So when you turn around and you say, how is it that all these people did this thing? Well, basically they really believed that they believed their political party. They believed all the people who were sitting there and telling you it's a real thing. They believed all the doctors at this thing, and the doctors believed other people who told them the same thing. And so you're dealing with this kind of incestuous cycle that that doesn't have an independent thought to it, and
Very true.
that's really the issue there. But if you turn around and go into something like the vaccines, this is multiple decades. And if it turns out that they just started hiding research that was inconvenient to them, it's one thing to not believe in research and to not like include that as part of your epistemological reasoning for what you do, especially if the findings of that research is that you've been a terrible human being, right? Like I can understand that. But it's a whole different kettle of fish if it's like a greater good argument and that you have ruined people's lives uh, because you didn't like it.
Yeah, that's not really cool. And on a ever so slightly related note to life ruination, there's there's a kind of a very internety story that's worth covering, and that's going to be a VTuber by the name of Kirsch. You familiar with what's going on with this?
I've seen it. It looks stupid. It's like
Pretty
all
much.
e-drama. I fucking hate e-drama. I know that you guys like e-drama.
Well,
I
I'll just
just,
go over it.
I have a real
Just
life and
yeah,
it's so insignificant. But
it is.
the Kershaw thing is, she was a fan of a terrible game, like legitimately a terrible game. Because she was a fan of the terrible game, her, and I believe it is an actual she in this case. Her followers started buying the game, and she got a partnership with this company that made the terrible game. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Crime Boss. And then some folks on the
The usual
less than,
suspects.
yeah, the usual suspects came out and said, "How dare you partner with her? She said these things. Because she's
Said the
conservative."
usual lies about, she's an anti-Semite, she's
Yeah.
literally a Nazi, literally a
Yep.
racist, you know.
Yeah, and that's because she posted some stuff on, she posted some pro-Israel stuff, and she posted some anti-immigration stuff.
Yeah,
Right? That's really what it is.
I mean,
And it's kind of it's the
pretty
most
tame
mundane
stuff
of
too.
shit. It's really
Like not going
like
near
the
as hard
stuff.
as any of us go, not even remotely.
Really, realistically, if you go into the whole entire race-based discussion that I had today, that's probably the closest I've ever gotten. Because I was thinking about this today, as I'm like, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe the idea of a multicultural society is wrong. But that's not even there. It's just saying, hey, follow the fucking law is basically what she said. And that's not even the deeper question of whether it's feasible or anything like that. That's just follow the fucking law. And the usual suspects put her on blast, and so the company ended up cutting the sponsorship deal with her. So she posted about it, and then some, apparently, like, they found out the guy, and it is guy, it's a trans guy, who did this, and he had like this weird, and I mean fucking weird, fan fetish about taking normal women and putting them into breeding facilities for the
Mm-hmm.
trans women to fuck and
Yeah,
rape.
and this
And
person's
it
nickname, by the
is
way, is Anal Violence.
crazy. Yeah, this is like, I do not understand. And so like the best part is, and I everything that I've seen about Kirsha, so says that she's handling this in a beautiful way. All she's doing is going to this guy's page, pulling his fan fiction, pulling his videos, pulling his audio recordings, and pulling his fan fiction, and basically just showing it.
Now,
It's
I've got a little bit of an
provided without
update
comment.
directly
I'm
regarding that.
going to read this on my screen, on my stream.
So, she did, in fact, read one of his fanfics and got banned for a day for inappropriate content. Funny enough. But also, at the same time as this individual raising quite the fuss, there were a number of articles that have been written jumping on the bandwagon, and, well, to put it simply, they've been publishing quite obviously libelous material because it's verifiably false. And so they just go ahead and say, oh, well, there's this Nazi VTuber here and there. And so what happened is there was a letter delivered to the Vice offices, as a matter of fact, just a few days ago. And it might have been Kirsch that did the delivery, even. In costume, funny enough. But left just some legal notes there. And then some of these articles, well, they just found their way off of the internet somehow. 3 specifically libelous or slanderous, I don't know which is the appropriate term, but either way, they 3 articles have disappeared.
Hmm.
As well they should. When you're,
Interesting.
actually putting your company at risk for this sort of thing, there you go. Now, what has happened since, since this. Yeah, the game itself. It went from kind of middling reviews to overwhelmingly unpopular, unsurprisingly, and it's probably not going to make its way back because, as you said, at best it's mid, at best, and
And most of the reviews were not mid. They were not there.
yeah,
She just happened to like it because it was. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I've watched some of the streams of it. It looks like an interesting premise. It's not much different than some of the calculator games I played back in high school. Right? It's just done with a 3D graphical format, first person type thing.
yeah, and
But
you get some combat in there too, so yeah,
right, like and that's what I mean, first person type shit. But
right.
it's go to the jewelry store, rob the jewelry store, right? Like very simple shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
And awash in a sea of sameness, they had a shining star saying, "Hey, this is cool."
Yep.
And so they decided to listen to people that didn't want their product. Which, oh, as a by the by, a number of the individuals who spoke out so strongly against Kirsch and this collaboration have since that time, well, they checked out the game. You'll never guess what they thought of it. A game about doing crimes. Well, unfortunately, the main characters are oftentimes representative of the key demographics and majority demographics of America, and so they found the game rather offensive, as you might imagine. So, enjoy your new audience. I'm sure they'll do very well for you. But we got a little bit of an update there. A fellow by the name of Marek Tyminski. You may or may not be familiar with him by name, but he's the chief guy at CI Games, who made Lords of the Fallen, which has where they basically said, you know what, you cancel culture mobs and your things. We're just not going to. We're not going to do that. And everybody's quite pleased, and Lords of the Fallen is being incredibly well received. But anywho, Merrick reached out and said it's tough to hear as the story goes. Happy to collab with Kirsch in the future if she's interested. So there you go. There you go. Maybe that'll turn into something for them. Because he seems like a pretty decent dude. You know, he's not going hard. He's not going full in on the paint like Mark Kern or anything. But hey, every dev we can get on our side saying, let's make games for gamers, and also maybe not sell them for more than $70 fucking dollars. Just saying. But let's make games for gamers and consider that as our key thing, as it were, moving forward, I guess. It's a weird time. It is a very weird time. We're seeing more and more of these big name games. On another big name game out of Bungie. I don't know if you've caught this in amongst the gaming press. There's a lot of news on it, but it turns out that the art for Marathon was essentially all lifted from one artist's work.
I did see that.
Yeah,
I did see that.
And it
but
is
so this is a routine and recurring thing that Bungie does. Like, basically every year there's a scandal about how they lifted the art for something from someone, and they didn't actually compensate them or even give credit. So that's like a yearly occurrence with Bungie. So this isn't anything new. They're just not. You make the argument they're not that creative.
No, that is true. That is true. Now, let's see. I had okay. So the other thing in the past week, we've got a tentative. Well, I wouldn't say that. That's not the right choice of words. We have a 90-day pause on the U.S.-China tariffs. reciprocal as well. They are going to be slightly higher from our end on them, and pretty much back to normal on the China side. It's a 90-day pause, and there are a lot of people that are saying, Trump got clowned or she got clowned. Really, no one did. These are kind of the first steps. When you're dealing with a facial society, there are things that you have to do and ways that you have to interact. Xi can't be seen to be weak in this. And as much as all of this has been an absolute disaster for small business in China, because we're their number one customer, and they just said, we're not buying. Fuck you. So that's had an absolutely disastrous effect on a number of relatively small businesses, like clothing lines, furniture lines, toy companies, that sort of thing. And as a matter of fact, I don't have any handy right away, but there's been tours of some of these factories where they've just left the machines. They've left like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. Much of it then gets looted by the employees that they're not getting paid anymore, and the company's shut down, and the boss has gone off to Macau or something. So things have gotten very weird over there, and with that, she blinked. Because
Well,
that's the long and short of it. But we'll have
I
to
mean,
see how it plays.
see,
But
this
yeah.
is kind of the reality of the situation is that there's two China tales that are out there, and nobody really knows what the true story of China is.
Mm-hmm.
China could
It is
be
very, very obscured.
right.
Pointedly so. I mean, obviously, they don't want anyone to know if their society's collapsing. Obviously. But by that same notion, we
So
see
so
some
that the
things.
question is, are they our largest threat or are they a paper tiger? And I've seen analysis on both sides. Um, you know, they are basically using all of the proceeds that they get from us to, you know, go and do skeezy ass shit. But at the same
Yeah.
time, the reality is that when you look at like their trade stuff, yeah, okay, so we have a trade deficit, and that's not necessarily good. Um, but they have to import pretty much all of their energy, and they have to import like one of the why is it that they're building solar at all? The answer is because they don't have coal, they don't have oil and gas, and they have zero nuclear resources. So it is a giant like one thing that's good on them that we're not so good at is they've recognized it's a liability and tried to build out networks of stuff that they do have, which is a whole lot of silicon and rare earths, right? They're able to do the rare earth processing in the silicon. So that's why they're building solar, and that's why they're not building coal. Well, they're building a ton of coal, but they actually still have to import all of that stuff. So it's kind of a crazy thing. If you stressed their system, what would happen? Would they bend or would they break? Because on one hand, they are an economic powerhouse with a decent military
And a hell of a manufacturing
basis,
base.
and on the other, they are nothing without the United States. And so, it would seem that the wager with China was that they are nothing without the United States. And that would seem to be what the answer is.
It
So we
kind
learned.
of looks like it.
That's what it kind of looks like.
Like, Belt and Road all you want. That doesn't mean that the places you're building belts and building roads have any money or any consumers to buy. You know,
Well,
you,
the what's good about the Belt and Road Initiative, and this, by the way, is what the United States should have done,
oh yeah, we should have
is
been doing that so that they wouldn't have roads made
we
out of
we
paper
should have
mache.
we should have absolutely been doing that because one,
That's
uh,
good
you,
imperialism right there.
and by the way, that's what we used to do. You
True.
turn around and say, hey, Let's talk about the Panama Canal. That's basically the fucking Belt and Road Initiative.
Sure.
We go into a country that has a location that we're interested in to build something that we want, and we built it. And then we said, guess what? You guys are going to make a fuckload of money because we sat there and put a trade hub in the middle of your shithole. And why did we put a trade hub there? Because we need refueling, we need access to, we need access to the resources you have. We used to do that stuff. And it is, granted, I know everybody's anti-colonialist now, but that is basically your imperialism, your colonialism, all of that stuff where we say, hey, you've got resources here. You can't use them in your current state. We will give you money and we will build the infrastructure so that we get primary access to this resource and will enrich your country, right? We don't have to fire a shot. We get the resources we want and the country starts to develop, right? Eventually, you move on to the next country where it's cheaper. And that's what China did. And we should have been doing it. So shame on the US for deciding to turn all of our money inwards on shit like pride and welfare and all these other things rather than focusing on economic expansion in foreign countries as a and wrapping it in the guise of, hey, we're your allies and your friends. But at the same time, the only way that China gets to keep on going and chugging along and doing that is with U.S. money,
Mm-hmm. Ain't no free
right?
rides.
So if we didn't offload kind of the basic shit to them, the question is, would they have ever, if we just maintained what we were doing before, building infrastructure in other countries so we got access to the resources of those countries, like, would we have ever had anything to fear? And the answer is probably not. Right? China would not never be a threat on the horizon. They wouldn't have anywhere near the resources they need to build any of the military craft that they do, which would have fundamentally left North Korea as in a much weaker position because China essentially protects them from the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the world. And so if China had never developed, then North Korea would have gone nowhere. And so now you're really talking about Russia, but Russia only has the GDP of New York State. And so really it would be nothing. And we could essentially ignore them. Like
Could
we
have.
wouldn't have had to do anything if we had turned around and chosen
There'd have never been a
to
BRICS.
to distribute our manufacturing. Like we could have done the same kind of trade we did with China, which is we'll send you money, you give us manufacturing. We could have done that with a ton of third world countries and built up our manufacturing base in those countries and gotten and exploited their low labor costs and accessed all of their goods and materials.
Mm-hmm.
We could have done that. And if you didn't like have one country that you funneled all of that resource to, like that would work out really really well because then none of them would be strong enough to like be the manufacturing hub of the United States, right? They would all be a kind of a weird thing, and you could have balanced that with tariffs, and it could have been this great wonderful thing where the United States, China is producing a little bit of our stuff, Vietnam's producing a little bit of our stuff. We're enriching the world, but none of them are getting so rich that they can actually challenge our authority or power, and that would have worked out just fine. None of them can buy land in the United States. Hey, let's do that. No foreign nationals can buy land in the United States. I think that's a great law.
Yeah, or bare
Now you're
bare minimum, no government connected entities can. Bare minimum,
correct.
that at least that,
Right,
right?
but now we're not, we wouldn't be in the position where we'd be sitting there and saying, "Oh my God, look, we need to sit there and do all of these. We need to do all this foreign aid. We need to just give them money, and that'll make it all better." No, all that shit would have gone away, and we would have been left with we get their resources at a much lower cost than what we can produce them here, but none of them have all of our production capacity, right? Nobody's doing all of our pharmaceuticals. So like, yeah, okay, we've got a little bit of stuff in this country here, and we're going to tariff them a little bit more as the like, and this is one of the beauties of the trade deficit thing. tariffs would naturally increase to the point where they're kept at a certain level of industrial development. And then other areas that don't have that level of industrial development would have had lower tariffs. And so business would have naturally grown globally to our benefit rather than single point failure.
Mm-hmm. Which is very much where we are now. We get our
Yep.
fucking drugs from China,
I know.
and they are an open and stated adversary.
Yep.
And we buy necessary essentials for daily life from them. We
Yep.
got to fix that.
Kind of wild.
Yeah,
wild.
it's crazy. It is.
I would
crazy
just
town.
love I would love for us to, like, if it was a paper tiger, to knock him over. Like, I get that Trump wants to have a trade deal because it really benefits him to win like that, and never, like, don't just freeze him out to freeze him out. But man, it would have been great to let that keep on going.
Speaking of, just real quick, speaking on trade deals, there's a lot of folks that have been real upset with how friendly Trump's been getting with folks over in the Middle East lately. And to those folks, I say you need to shut the fuck up about that 747 that Joe Biden's people started setting up getting from Qatar. You need to shut the fuck up about how Biden and his people were going to get a 747 from Qatar, and then Trump says, "Oh, well, let's do that." Because that's the whole fuck. That's the story of that. Like, that had all been set in motion, like 2 years back.
That doesn't surprise me.
And so now, oh, well, Donald Trump, he's taking the bribe. Oh, Donald Trump had owned the property of Cater. Like, oh, so what
I
you're
mean,
saying is,
don't get me wrong. Like, from an appearances perspective, it was a mistake to sit there and take it. From a practical perspective, it doesn't benefit him at all. And, like, I appreciate that he's just kind of, like, ignored it. Like, they tried to make it a news story. It was a thing for a couple days, and then I got my hands on kind of what the story was, and it's not really that big of a deal.
yeah.
It's before that 747. If that 747 becomes Air Force One, which would be way cool, that's not going to happen for like 7 years, right?
Actually, I
Trump will
think
not
it's 5.
fly in it.
Actually,
Whatever it is,
but
whatever
wait,
it is,
that's
it's
5 years from
outside
now.
of the point at which
There might
Trump
be a
gets
Trump
anything
flying
from
in it, but it's not going to be Don.
Yes.
Well, it might
Well,
be, but not. Well, it's not here.
I don't think Eric will take it. I don't think any of his kids want it.
Don
I
Jr.
expect that we will see Barron. Barron will be
one day, yes. But the question is, Barron going to be the president, or is he going to be the emperor of the world? You know,
the Emperor of Man has been born, and it's Baron Trump.
You know, I mean, it's tall enough.
I don't know. You know, it all depends. I think that the return of Trump to power and the dissolution. So I stand by what I've said before. I'm not really impressed until people get arrested. We are seeing them prosecute people, and I think that's the answer. Is that when the left steps out of line, we need to prosecute them. Not because we have to prosecute the left, but because they have gotten far too comfortable with this shit. But I don't know if we're going to have like a full revolution anymore because Trump came back into power and there wasn't really a big deal about it. Like, there hasn't been.
There was also some of those early actions that have had an absolutely disastrous effect on their ability to react. The closure of U.S. aid was just earth-shattering for the enemies of America, honestly, because that's where a shitload of their funding was coming from. You know, the enemies inside the house and making the call. You know, we cut off their fucking phone line.
And I do agree with that, right? Like, that's kind of the thing is the gutting of this funding, the gutting of these agencies, bringing this stuff outside of that control. I think that we will see significantly, by the time we get to year 2 of the Trump presidency, we won't have this crazy vitriol. We are still seeing the media actively anti-Trump to like an extreme degree, but even that's kind of toned down from the first year.
Well, even the first days. There
Yeah.
is, from the usual suspects, of course, is the expected vitriol. But CNN, of all places, is starting to moderate. And that's very interesting. They're
Yeah,
getting
it
guests
is.
on that are actually reasonable. So, it stands to reason that they've figured out that, well, maybe they want to continue to exist as a media organization. Which, if you want to, you're going to have to at least pretend to have some semblance of honesty. Unlike organizations like the FDA. So there's something interesting that I just trying to follow alternative medicine because it's interesting, and there's sometimes there's something to it, sometimes it's nothing. In this case, we've got not even an alternative medicine. We just have an old medicine that we're seeing very good results with, not unlike ivermectin. Something that people just started trying on a couple things and finding astounding results. That being dimethyl sulfoxide. It was kind of hidden away back in '64, and it's starting to see a bit of a resurgence. So apparently there are people that have we're just seeing the earliest of studies on this, but there are people that are being they're able to treat macular degeneration, blindness, and tinnitus with this, as well as a number of other very interesting issues: cataracts, glaucoma, sinusitis, toothaches, peritonitis, and again, these are all really new things. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on this because this is like what's the other old one that has recently started? Methylene blue, which is a dye that was discovered in the late Victorian ages, and it'll turn your piss blue, but it has some really excellent properties, just kind of across the board. Anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, I believe.
I have to take a look at it. I know that there's a whole lot of folks in the alternate health sector who swear by this stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the one thing you can
But
say that it will do is that it absolutely will treat. Oh Jesus! How in the fuck do you say this? Methemoglobinemia, which is a thing where your hemoglobin doesn't carry oxygen the right way, and it works directly on that. But by that same notion, if it makes your body more able to carry oxygen, then it stands to reason that that's going to be good for you because as modern research has shown, the more oxygenated you can get yourself, the better and healthier you're going to be, by and large. So it makes sense. Be very interesting to see more come of it. But I'll throw a link to a. Actually, I'll throw the link here in staff chat too, so you can check it out because he's put out a bunch of stuff on it. But that's also got a link to the article, and I'll throw that, of course, in the show links for anyone as well that wants to look into methylene. Well, not methylene blue. In this case, the dimethyl sulfoxide and methylene blue. As said, also worth your while to look up. It's pretty good. It's you don't want to do too much because people will get weirded out at the blue stains in the toilet and shit. But that's just one of those things. But anyhow,
yeah, I
let's.
got to look into it. It's kind of weird. So on one hand, I used to believe in better living through chemistry, right? And that was kind of 90s era, 2000s. We
There
know
is
enough
some wisdom
to
to that, to be
we know
sure.
enough to do something with it. But as time has gone on, I've found more and more that I am increasingly skeptical of the idea of interventions because what you're seeing when you take a look at the data is that the interventions are not necessarily like we're not doing when we talk about science and technology is at least as much investigative as it is prescriptive or prescriptive. And like I'll give you an example. One of the things with the fertility stuff that my wife and I have been going through, we went to IVF because that's what everybody does. That's what everybody tells you to go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except it turns out that the Catholics developed their own advanced fertility treatment, which doesn't involve any of the bioethics issues.
Oh, really?
And when you read the Catholic stuff, it's, hey, we're going to do root cause analysis and try to figure out what's actually going on because, figure out what's interrupting the process as it is. And somehow that doesn't play into effect with the IVF stuff at all, and they get the same rates or higher. They get same success rates or higher. And you're
Interesting.
like, well, what the fuck? And one of the other things that you run into is, again, as much as I believe in better living through chemistry, I think one of the problems we have is we end up chasing symptoms a lot. And because we're chasing symptoms, we don't know whether the symptoms that we're chasing are due to the medications that we're providing,
Mm-hmm.
right? The intervention that we have has its own symptomatic impact.
Hello,
Uh,
AZT.
right. Or are we sitting
Thanks,
there
Fauci.
and yeah, are we chasing the symptoms of the interventions that we have, or are we chasing the symptoms of the disease? And I don't think there's enough careful foresight into that. So you turn around and we take a look. We've talked about the chart of the left and mental illness, and particularly left-wing women compared to conservative women.
Sure.
Well, probably one of the bigger differences between the left and the right is in the utility and uptake of birth control. Well, birth control has, as a side effect, depression. Like that's just a natural side effect of birth control. Turns
Mm-hmm.
out you fuck up with a woman's hormonal cycle, and it doesn't put her in a good place.
And just as a note, too, that seems to be at across the board minimum. That there are women who can also suffer even worse,
Sure,
psychological effects from it. But at a bare
all,
minimum,
all of
basically
all
all women get depression from this. It's rare
right,
that they
and
don't.
and and so you turn around, it's not going to be an immediate onset thing. Depression is not the kind of thing that you're like, oh yes, I feel depressed this one time. It's not, I take the birth control pill. It'll build up to that point,
Well, it's like
right?
mercury poisoning, a little here, a little there, and
Sure.
it just builds and builds and builds and builds.
So the question then becomes why how many women are in that group of like liberals with mental illness issues that is just liberals who are on birth control, right? Because
That's a
liberals
fair
are much
question.
more likely to be on birth control than are conservatives. And so, how much of that effect that we see of that mental illness in liberal society is due to the fact that they're medicating themselves just outside of their normal hormonal cycle? And for at least the women, right?
Interesting
Men may
question.
be in the same case, right? Like maybe they're engaged in a series like I don't think the left is as likely as the right is to get out and do nature stuff. But how many folks are like I'm a firm believer that if you don't go outside and touch grass, literally I think that people need some means or method of determining how small and insignificant they are in the universe, as just a touch point to kind of put your problems into perspective. So if the left is predominantly stuck in urban centers, which we know they are, and they're not really going out into the true natural world.
Well, the
Um,
food comes from HEB. The food comes from Kroger.
right. So like how much of their worldview and their perspective is due to the fact that they're removed from a natural environment that human beings were supposed to be in. I routinely and regularly go back out into nature, and it is very beneficial in my opinion. But we start talking about those mental illness things. How much of it is they're eating shitty food, they're under shitty lighting, they're not in a natural environment in any way, shape, or form, so they feel kind of shitty. They start taking drugs to offset that, be it caffeine at a minimum, or tons of alcohol, or whatever the fuck it is to make themselves feel good. It doesn't matter what it is. And then all of a sudden, now you're feeling constantly, you're constantly feeling shitty as your state of being. And so is it really that you're in need of medication, or do you just need to rebalance your life to like normal human function? Maybe it's not that you need the SSRIs. Maybe you just need to, not party all night
Or
long,
maybe, you're
right?
already badly loaded down with chemicals and you need a
Or
full
or that,
detox.
right? Like you maybe your
Maybe you've
pure
been on
sugar
so many,
diet,
or you've been on so many prescriptions all your life that your brain chemistry has been rewired.
right? Any one of those possibilities, and you start digging into it, and like how much of the left right mental illness epidemic is due solely to those kinds of things. I bet it's not zero, right? I don't know what it is, but I bet it's not zero.
Yeah, that's fair. Very, very possibly, or very likely, I should say, even.
And that would explain the difference between the left and the liberals and the conservatives in terms of mental illness. Because I struggle to believe that, obviously it's a ha, this group of people is mentally ill. Obviously, like there's that aspect of it. That's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, where we get to have our guffaws and our chuckles over those kinds of things. But there has to be a cause for it. It could be that the mentally ill are more likely to be liberal. It could be that liberalism causes mental illness, or it could just be that liberalism leads to a series of different life choices which result in a higher incident rate of mental illness than does the conservative life choices. And it's not anything to do with it's just correlated to the politics, not caused by the politics.
Could be. Could be. It would be interesting if we could get an actual study on that sort of thing, but you want to talk about off limits topics. I mean, that's probably pretty high up there, at least as far as the academics. I was speaking of some things that have happened in amongst the academics. We've got some good science news, something pretty damn cool here. So let me see if I've got the actual article or the dates on this. Ah, cool. Do. Out of the New York Times. When did this occur? I will not create a free account, but I will include a link to the thing for everybody below. The long and short of it is we have a custom built treatment. In this case, 9-month-old baby had a fatal genetic disorder, and they made a custom genetically modified treatment just for the kid. And that specific, what is it? CPS1 deficiency. Okay. And let's see here. It looks like that is, wow. It has a 50% mortality rate in the first week. Kid made it to 9 months old. The doctors did 3 infusions of edited gene stacks to change one letter of the DNA in the child, and they did it.
Good job. See,
NIH
now that's
report.
a
I'll include that
perfect
one.
that's a perfect use of gene therapy. Take something that's a lethal condition and make it less so. Not good use of gene therapy. Sit there and inoculate people against a 99.97% survival rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, also a thing that is incredibly, incredibly fast in its evolutions too. On top of that,
Well, that's true for all viruses.
So basically, no virus is a good medium
Correct.
for this, or not medium, isn't a good choice. We'll say at all.
Nope.
It's a bad choice, as a matter of fact. Possibly the worst. Possibly. At least that's what I'm told. Anyway. So, let's see. I guess we're getting a little late into the night. Let's drop into some of the good news stories. How about? So Trump was over there, doing the whole Qatar, UAE, Bin Salman thing. Which, by the way, I do support. Bin Salman in the last Trump era was working pretty resolutely, and yeah, you can say what you want about that fucking journalist Khashoggi, and yes, he was probably mutilated by Bin Salman, or, well, not Bin Salman, but people close to him, and yeah, that's shitty. That's the whole story. Yeah, that's shitty. There's not much that can be done. It's a fucking monarchy. It is what it is. You have to have an understanding of the way these things are and just do your best to make them better. Don't be like Hillary. Don't go in and, we saw he died. Maybe try and fix things instead of deposing the Shah of Iran and creating this fucking problem that we've been dealing with since the 70s. That sort of thing. Maybe work with people. But anyway, Trump received an award in the UAE. He received the, what the hell is the name of this thing here? He was awarded by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan the Order of Zayed. And it has, it's basically the highest order, highest reward or award or what have you that a person can receive in the UAE. It's given to kings and people of legendary status, to put it in the simplest of terms. So they like the guy. And on top of that, too, when he arrived, they didn't do a red carpet rollout. They did a purple carpet rollout, which is a royalty-only deal. So I like this. These people that were just kind of meh to the last administration, they're open to working with us again. And that's what we need. They control kind of a lot of the oil. And they can also secure the release of, say, Americans still held by Hamas, for instance. So, better that we have a good working relationship with these people. At least in my opinion. But, what do I know? I'm just one little guy. But anywho, that's just one thing. So, moving a little internationally here. We've got something from Trinidad and Tobago. I've been there once, very briefly. It was like a day. Gorgeous place. It reminds you of the Caribbean. I think it is in the Caribbean, actually. Anyway, neither here nor there. What's happened, though, is that there have been some movements there to... What? No, stop that stupid machine. There. No. There have been some movement there on human rights, actually. So what they're doing is moving from a may issue kind of licensure scheme with firearms to a shall issue licensing scheme. They shouldn't have licenses in the first place. But they're making moves in the right direction. And, oh, wow. So it's an older fella. So at age 73, Prasad, oh my God. Prasad Bisesar? Yeah. Prasad Bisesar becomes the first person in the nation's history to serve non-consecutive terms as prime minister. Kicking it like our man Donald. Anyway, only woman to have led the Twin Island Caribbean nation. I thought it was in the Caribbean. Oh, there we go. So, just a quote here. We will be reviewing shortly the firearm licensing laws. Remember, we've said we will consider giving legal firearms to law-abiding citizens, but they will only be given to persons who want it. I see some people complaining, saying, no, she observed. If you want it, you... Oh, okay. English, not our first language. Anyway, what they're doing, like I said, they're moving from a may issue, or from a may issue scheme to a shall issue scheme. And as we've seen everywhere that this happens, crime rates are going to drop, security is going to go up, and everyone is going to be a little bit happier. So, kudos. Good on you, Trinidad and Tobago. That'll actually help. Oh, what else? What's else here? I've got a couple of good ones. Oh yeah. The out of a shit, I don't know which federal court specifically, but out of one of the federal districts, we've got a decision that the IRS indeed needs to share data with the Trump administration in regards to illegals. So IRS data will now, going forward, be useful in tracking them down because
I do remember that case. That was a good ruling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good to see that finally make its way down to where it ought to be. Because I mean, the resources of the state should be used to kind of help the state. You would think. And on the IVF thing, I don't know about you if you heard about this. It's actually kind of terrible news, but out in Palm Springs, some IVF clinic got maybe bombed. Don't know. Like some car exploded in a very car bomby fashion. So it could be something. It could be nothing. It could have been just
Palm Springs. Which state?
Oh, sorry, California.
Oh.
So it very much could be something, but it could also just be a happenstance. That said, there was a body spotted on the scene, and apparently the explosion was really quite something. There's not any video of that, just video of the aftermath. But that said, it's a hell of a thing. They just absolute devastation. Like blew out the fronts on like buildings up and down the whole block. Did damage on the inside. As said, the one fatality. I think there was something like 19 other people injured. And then, of course, whatever's stored at the IVF facility as well, so who knows. Anyway, we've got this one, which I support on a personal and ideological level, but I don't know. There are things that we don't have non-animal models for, so how do you get answers to questions? It is what it is. But there's certain things we kind of need animals for. As grotesque and kind of horrifying as some of the testing is, there's just not another way. Anyway, out of the White Coast Waste Project, they've been working on this set of testing that's been done on cats with, electrocution, I should say. They've been made incontinent, and we don't really have models for, we can do organs on a chip and all this, but there's not an intestines on a chip. It's one of those things that we'd have to build an accurate model for, and then maybe we don't have the data to do that accurate model, so who knows. Either way, they were doing some kind of horrifying experiments on cats with results that we kind of need. So this wasn't like the Fauci, having beagles have their faces eaten off by flies to see how long it takes a fly to eat the face off of a beagle. This is at least useful information that we need to have. So I'm a little torn. I'm glad to see, a kind of butchery program end, but then again, they weren't doing garbage science. So,
it's always really tough because so a good example of this is the Nazi experiments on the Jews. Right? It was a fucking horrifying thing, but
we learned
at
a lot.
The same time,
we learned a lot of really useful stuff.
We learned a lot of really useful stuff, and that's the thing is we cannot. The biggest thing that we got out of that was actually how to revive people from hypothermia and extreme states. It probably advanced a lot of...
And not to mention the depth of psychological knowledge we were actually able to get out of that. That was hard science. A lot of people suffered really bad for us to know what breaks people, but now we know.
Well, there's that. We also know about They did a lot of work with transplants, finding all the different ways to not transplant stuff in people.
Yeah.
And it's
All the
very
ways
easy
that
to
don't
look
work.
back. Yeah, it's very easy to look back and say, hey, um, I think that there could have been a nicer and easier way to do this. But when you don't know something, it's a lot of it's shooting in the dark,
Yeah.
and that's the hard part.
Shit, some of it's just throwing shit at a wall and see what sticks.
Animal testing is a very sad reality. Um, I would love for them to find better ways to test that don't require destruction of the test subjects. Um, kind of like, hey, we're gonna go take a couple biopsies of tissues. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll
Organs on a
send
chip,
them out.
you know,
Or
cloned
well,
organs, what have you.
organs on a chip would be great. The problem that so here's the challenge, right? Um, like we were talking about earlier, I believe in better living through chemistry, but and there's the but. How much of an intervention do we have? So you turn around and say organs on a chip. You take something that is I think that's in vivo as opposed to in situ.
In vitro,
Um,
but yeah.
whatever, in vitro.
Yeah.
Um,
I did a little bit of research on this for this show.
yeah, so that's different than the real world. And we talked about this with nuclear reactors and nuclear testing, and we talked about this with things like uh, gain of function research, those kinds of things. I am firmly of the opinion that it is as shitty as it is to go for whole system approaches. You're much more likely to catch the externalities if you go for a whole system real world research rather than a microcosm element of the research. So
There
I
is something
I
to that.
that's always where I struggle. I'm a big fan of good people need to occasionally do bad things to serve good. But the caveat to that is, how do you know when you're not just doing evil? And the answer would be that
Well, case in point here.
there's a defined scope and limitation and endpoint for this.
Yeah. Well, it's like you want to get a specific answer to a specific question, and you do. Well, that's not the best thing because when you've got a specific question of how long does it take a bot fly to eat the face off of a beagle, that's not necessarily scientifically useful, right?
Right.
So, so it's like, okay, how do you fix something that has an unnatural blockage in its intestines that we've got to get out or the person's going to die? That's a very different thing than how much pain can a beagle take before it will begin to hate you.
Yep.
There are absolutely levels to this.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why I have so much trouble with this one. It's like they are barbaric practices, and it's pretty horrible, but we're getting good data out of it, and it might save some lives. So, sometimes you gotta break a couple eggs. I hate to say that, but well, I don't hate to say that. That's just the truth of things. So it is what it is. As sad as that is, things get broken and people get hurt, and it just happens. So the best we can do is try to minimize that. And things are going to get broken and people are going to get hurt in the act of minimizing that suffering. But if we're true and we're actually working towards these ends, then it's pretty noble, right? We're at least trying to make it better, even if we're kind of taking stabs in the dark. At least we're not trying to hurt people. But anyway, speaking of not trying to hurt people, we've got a interesting development here out of Representative Anna Paulina Luna. She's called for an end to the Patriot Act. Wholehearted support from this guy right here. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Want to see that fucking travesty gone. It
Look,
has
every
existed
single
too
time the
long.
government turns around and says, "Hey, I know that we screwed up and violated the law and did this thing with our secret court that nobody gets to know about,
Mm-hmm.
but we really need this power, and we promise to do better next time." Yeah, well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of sick and tired of giving you guys next times.
Yeah. Like you've you've got enough second chances. Okay.
Yep.
We're done here. We're done here. Oh, and speaking of who else is done, in the time since the last show, the Catholic Church was able to quickly come to a consensus, and they got their new guy. I think we reported on this because I believe they had gotten him in just before we did the show. But some interesting things have happened since then. It seems that Leo is, despite some of his more non-traditional leanings, as far as church affairs go, he's proving to be a bit of a traditionalist and a conservative. As a matter of fact, we've got a statement from the man himself here just a few days ago, reaffirming that marriage is a union between a man and a woman, and a condemnation of abortion as a moral wrong. And that's a bit of a change of pace from the way that the Catholic Church has been handling things of late. And there's
To be
rather,
fair,
hmm?
this is how this goes, right? They elect a liberal pope, and then they follow it up with a conservative pope.
Yeah, and in this case, at least he's religiously conservative. But
I understand, but this is I expected a conservative pope this go round. Right? It always surprises me when they elect a liberal one, but I've gotten used to it at this point. I think John Paul II he was a very good pope if I remember correctly, but he was, back when I was in high school. And he was kind of he walked a moderate line, but since then it's been election of liberals followed by conservatives, followed by liberals, followed by conservatives.
hmm, yeah, I guess kind of that way. I don't follow it. I haven't been following it since. I mean, like right at the end of John Paul's era, I was real young, so it's like it wasn't really my thing. I think I might have read like a chick tract here or there or something about that nonsense. And of course, Jack T. Chick he has nuanced views on the Catholic Church. We'll say, uh, not a fan. If you're not familiar with Jack Chick and his chick tracts, but anyway, that's they're fun, by the way. If you can find them still these days, look them up. There's some ones that are not in print anymore. I've managed to acquire one of them. I think it's the one with the trucker, but the one with the gay guy, you can't find that one anymore because he went to hell for being gay, obviously. So that's fun stuff. That's fun stuff. Look up the classic chick tracks. Anyway, on that note, too, Verizon, we've got an update there. They are ending their DEI programs in adherence with the Trump executive order. So, probably wise since DEI is actually race-based hiring and it's actually technically illegal in the U.S. So probably a good call. Probably a good call. Another good call, we'll see. But any time that anything happens to the Federal Reserve to make them less powerful or less able to do anything because they fuck with us, it's a good thing. So, rumor going in, well, not rumor, per memo that has come out of the Federal Reserve, there will be a staff reduction of 10%. Would like to see 100%, but hey, baby steps, right? We'll take the little ones as we can get them. Let's see what else we got. Oh, yeah. Here's a fun one to end us out for the night, at least as far as the stuff I was wanting to cover. Now there is some nuance to this, and I'll get into it. But long and short, the National Association for Gun Rights and Rare Breed Triggers, as well as Texas Gun Rights, have reached a settlement with the Department of Justice and the ATF. So the ATF is going to be dropping the suit against rare breed triggers and will not be pursuing forced reset triggers, but Rare Breed will be maintaining the patent and will be going rather hard in the paint on that to make sure that no one else develops any new forced reset triggers. Problem there, though, in the 30s, there is specifically they're doing this so that pistol forced reset triggers can't be created. But I can't remember the exact date. I'll have to look this up elsewhere. But there's a forced reset trigger that was patented in the 30s, I do believe, that would obviously predate this or any of the existing laws. So, what happens there? Well, that'll be interesting to see. And as they, enter more and more, what would you say? Become more commonplace, enter more common use. It'll be harder and harder to say no to further developments. So, kind of a win, kind of a weird situation because they've built themselves a bit of a monopoly. So, what do you do there? Either way, it's good to see that the forced reset triggers as they exist up till now should be protected. There'll probably be some more movement on this. I'll get back to you as it's there. But, anywho, another fun one here. This one's reported on by The Hill. Let me just pop this guy up because it's fun. And that's going to be out of South Africa. Yes, things turn full circle. So, this year, the G20 is meant to be held in South Africa. Yeah, Group of 20 meeting. All the important muckety-mucks. It's scheduled for November in Johannesburg. And I'll just read the quote because it's que delicioso. Pardon my French. Anyway, we're supposed to have I guess, G20 meeting there. I don't know how we can go unless the situation is taken care of, Trump said. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. So, as it stands, the U.S. is not really going to be going to this place that supports a genocide against, our core demographic. Good on you, Donnie. That's exactly what you should be saying. These people hate us, and we should not be treating them with the ultimate of fucking kid gloves and kindness for literally wanting us dead. So, yeah, fuck them. And let me see here. Is there something else I had? Oh, yeah, no, carfentanyl's here. Look up carfentanil. It is to fentanyl what fentanyl is to morphine. So, be careful, users. Be very, very careful and know your sources. Because the world is crazy, and there are people out there that will just straight up kill you. Because then they can say to the next junkie, oh yeah, my shit's so fucking strong, killed the last guy. God damn, that's dark. But
that is a little bit dark. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna fight.
I mean, that's some fucking advertising there, Jesus. But yeah, I mean, speaks to the potency, I guess. But anyway, that's pretty much all I was wanting to cover this week. There's, like I said, there's a shitload more, but and just never time. So, I guess that's about all I was wanting to hit. Was there anything you wanted to cover this week, Steve?
Nah, I'm pretty much good with. Cool. We got most of the highlights. It was unfortunate. I had my graduation last week, birthday last week, so I was out for that.
No, that's completely understandable.
A lot of good stuff happened then.
Oh, you know what? There is one. There's kind of too much to it to give it the depth that it needs. And there's not much of a point going in with an explainer. So I will throw a link in. It'll be the last one in the show links. But the long and short here is that North Korea has been doing a lot of remote work, like Fiverr and shit like that, but not just Fiverr. They've been doing civil engineering and shit, and they've been forging the seals, say for the state of California or New Jersey or whatever, and giving to clients, you would say, like plans, for instance, architectural plans. They've got quote unquote structural engineering firms that are based out of North Korea that are non-existent, and they're using real companies as their front without the real companies knowing. So they'll like just steal the name, make up a fake website, do a bunch of fake Google reviews, and there you go. So there might be some infrastructure here and there that was designed by North Koreans. Just for some monies. Crazy fucking shit. Well, anyway, brother, it has been a pleasure.
You gotta respect the hustle.
Oh yeah, you do. I mean, for real. That's bold. It's absolutely bold. As bold as... sure, why not? As bold as appointing the new head for the NIH as the guy that, resurrected a zombie virus. Good times. Good times. But anyway, let's not dig too deep into the crazy, weird, bad stuff, because there's plenty enough of that. Go out and smoke yourself a healthy Marlboro cigarette. Don't. Actually, cigarettes are terrible for you. But anyway, all my love peoples. I'm Evan. That's Steve. You can find him at Ratman720. You can find me at That Fake Guy Dan. And our good friend Craig, you find him at CraigBob99. And it has been a pleasure, a privilege, a white privilege, a male privilege perhaps even. But anyway, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Share the links with all the peoples, anywhere and everywhere. And with that, we'll see you soon. Be good.